Hey guys, in this week's episode, we are going to be talking about the Many Saints of Newark. But before that, we're going to be talking about Chris's time at Fantastic Fest 2021, the phenomenon hit on Netflix Squid Game, and Midnight Mass. So, get ready.
Hello and welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me as always is Mike. How are you doing today?
I am doing well, thank you for asking.
And in honor of Squid Game, what is the childhood game that you would wager your life on if you were going to play it? Which game would you play?
Oh my, childhood game. Hide and seek.
You're pretty good at that?
Wow.
Yeah, I am actually. I'm pretty good.
It's really putting.
I'm
like,
a skinny
your life
guy,
in the
so I can
hands.
fit into some tight spots.
That's true, but you're really putting your life into like the hands of like someone else's skill.
That's
Finding
true.
That game.
people, yeah.
That's true, but I'm not the best long distance runner, so I wouldn't want to do tag. You know, I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Some of these
Also
games, I don't
with
even know what they're even talking about in
That's
Squid
true.
Game.
Also with us is Justin. Same question to you. Which game would you wager your life? Which childhood game would you wager your life on?
Video games do not count, right? We're talking about games.
Yeah, like
that you play.
playground games.
Okay. Then I would probably have to go with 21, the basketball game,
That's not
because
a playground game, is it?
it's not. I mean, I don't know. Maybe.
I think it counts.
What? Okay. Do you remember the game Jackpot, where like one person would throw the ball high in the air and yell out like a number?
No.
No.
And you had to, if you whoever caught the ball got like that many points, whatever number he yelled out, and you played to like first to a certain amount of points. But if they yelled out like jackpot, then like whoever caught that would like win or something. I don't know. Weird game.
Okay, cool. Just like Squid Game, I have not heard of this, but
We'd be awful at Squid Game, Mike.
I know, I'd
think.
die
We don't
real
know
quick.
any of these games.
Yeah. Well,
there you go. All right. If this is your first time listening, normally we like to start off every episode in a section called News on the March, where we talk about the film and TV news, or usually just the movies and TV that we've been watching. Then we move into our feature review. This week we will be discussing the Many Saints of Newark.
that's right. And also here on the Casual Cinecast, every other week, just about, we put out a Casually Criterion episode. Those episodes are where listeners choose a film from the Criterion Collection for us to review, and they do that by voting in the poll that we put out on our Twitter account. So check out our next Criterion poll. Follow us on Twitter for that. Also go back, check out our latest Criterion episode on The Big Chill, and also our back catalog for a ton of other Criterion Collection content. And speaking of Twitter polls, we do have the final results of our last Twitter poll, which will be our next episode next week, our Criterion episode. Mike, tell them what the results were.
All right, so the Twitter poll this week had the theme of Halloween, since we are in October, and we each chose a film from the Criterion Collection that fit that theme best. So the winner is Night of the Hunter with 58.3%. Don't Look Now came in second with 22.2%. And then lastly, Sisters with 19.4%. So there you go. Looks like we're doing Night of the Hunter probably next week.
Yep, and it wasn't particularly close.
No.
No, it wasn't.
All right. But like I said earlier, that poll is on our Twitter account, so follow us on Twitter at Casual Cinecast. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. If you want to send us any movie recommendations, Criterion poll themes for us to choose Criterion movies from, questions about the movies we're reviewing, send messages to any of those social media accounts or to casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And then, of course, if you haven't done so already, you like the show, you want to help other people find it, or just let us know that you like it, give us a review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, iTunes, whatever. Give us a 5-star maximum rating and tell us we're awesome.
Yeah, thanks. And with that, I think it is time to go ahead and get into the first section, News on the March.
That's true.
It is. Let's go.
When you're right, you're right.
I am right.
You on the mark!
Okay, Chris. We promised it on the last episode, and now we must deliver. What was it like at Fantastic Fest 2021? What did you see? What was the best part of it? Etc.
It was actually pretty awesome. It was obviously very different from a normal year. I don't have anything to compare it to necessarily, since this is my first year to go. But it was a lot of fun.
What a year you picked.
Yeah, what a year to pick to go to a Fantastic Festival. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I found everybody really friendly. Like, one of the cool things was, no matter what movie you went to, you could just kind of turn to the person sitting one seat away from you or 2 seats away from you and be like, hey, what's your favorite movie of the fest so far? And you could like start up a chat, talk for 10 to 15 minutes about the movies that have been playing so far. And everybody was just really eager and excited to talk about films. So there's a lot of cool people that you could talk to about films.
Do you like talking about films, Chris? Is that like a thing you like to do?
Used to be.
Yeah, I would have never guessed.
But yeah, so it was a ton of fun, and a lot of like-minded people, and there were a lot of pretty cool movies and cool movie experiences that I don't think I'll ever get to replicate for sure. You may remember, like I talked about The Master of the Flying Guillotine. I got to go see that movie, and when I bought the tickets, I didn't realize it, but RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan actually did like a running commentary throughout the whole movie, which I don't think will ever happen again for me. I don't think I'll ever even be in the same room as RZA, really. But it was pretty awesome to get that kind of running commentary about a kung fu film. For those that don't know, he did like some of the Kill Bill soundtrack and stuff like that. He's directed his own films as well, but it was just a really interesting experience, like to have him talk about the film throughout the whole thing. I thought that was really unique and not something that'll happen again. And some of my favorite movies that were there. So I did get to see, I saw Teton. It was like a week before it came out, and I did enjoy that quite a bit. And I also saw Benedetta, the new Paul Verhoeven lesbian nun movie, as it's called. I really enjoyed that as well. And I found out that, like, I feel like there's less emphasis on lesbian nun. There are lesbian nuns in it, but like it's about a lot of other stuff too, and I really enjoyed that. But those were kind of some of the bigger movies that were there, like established directors and stuff like that. So I wanted to call out 3 movies that were a little bit less under the radar. There's one movie called Glass House, which takes place in a post-pandemic type world. So it was very hit close to home, but it was a really good science fiction movie, kind of hit on a lot of things that I really like memory and what memories mean and stuff like that I really enjoyed. It. The pandemic that crossed across the country, like kind of what made people forget things. That was the what the pandemic was, and there's this family living in this glass house, if you will, and and a stranger comes and upturns everything, and I thought that was really good. Another one was called The Innocents, and this is about a group of children that begin to have superpowers, and I thought that this was really well acted. Like, if you get a group of kids like that are like below 10 to carry a film like this, it was remarkable how well these kids did. I think we'll see what happens in the future for these kids, but I think that if they continue down this path, they have a great future ahead of them. It was really great. There's like something that happens in this movie that I will never forget. Like, I still hear the noise of it, and we can talk about it if we ever actually watch the movie together. But like for something like that to happen, and for you, you're like, for better or worse, I'm never going to forget that noise. I think that's pretty cool. in its own way. And then my favorite movie I think I saw was a movie called Freaks Out. And it is an Italian like historical fantasy drama. It's takes place like in World War II. And it's a bunch of circus freaks that kind of have superpowers. And there's a Nazi that can see into the future. So he's hunting these freaks because they are going to change the tide of World War II. And it's really great. I don't necessarily want to spoil anymore. It looks like it's really high budget, like really well done. It was played at the Venice Film Festival. And it doesn't have a distributor yet. So it'll be interesting to see what actually happens with this film. Like if it just gets dumped on like a Netflix or, like a streaming service or what, or if it actually gets like a theatrical release. I do believe actually if this was like an English language film, it would do really well. Like superheroes are all the style, and this is basically like X-Men, in World War II type of thing. So I really enjoyed those three movies. And I think you guys you two and the audience as well, keep an eye out for these three films because they deserve to be seen. And in this weird landscape that we live in now with all the streaming services and theatrical releases, I think it's behooves us to call out these smaller films that don't often get these big splashy releases on Netflix and stuff. So,
yeah, sure.
But ultimately, I had a great time. I feel like I was really safe about it. I took a COVID test as soon as I got home before I saw anybody else. It was negative. So, everybody was wearing masks. Everybody was really good about wearing masks. So, yeah, nice. I had a great time.
Awesome, man. Well, that sounds like a great time. And I'll definitely look out for these movies because I'm jealous that you got to see a whole bunch of new movies. How do you say it? It's Titan?
It's like it was described to me like you're saying it with a bad French accent. Titan.
Titan. Okay,
so
well,
it's like
yeah,
T-E-
that's actually playing currently in Dallas, and I almost went to go see it, but I didn't. I don't know. I just decided not to, but
it's
out now, so it can be seen. And I've been hearing about this movie for quite a while, and I really want to see it. So,
if we get a chance, and maybe this will be, I would like to talk about this film, like as a full blown episode, because I think there's a lot in there to talk about. Whether you like it or not is like a whole nother thing because it's one of those movies you'll either like love or you'll hate. It's like a Cronenberg film, I would say. Like
that's the vibe I get.
Yeah,
not necessarily from the movie, but from the way that people seem to feel about it. It reminds me of the way that I felt about many Cronenberg films that I've seen, ones that I've both liked and disliked.
Yeah.
So.
And I think it's
shameless plug. Check out our review of Dead Ringers.
yeah, that's true. I think it's a well-made film, and I don't think there's any like arguing that point. It's just what is this film trying to say, and does it say it well? Those are things that can be argued. So and
like
and
a
fun to be
film.
talk about. Yeah, just like a Cronenberg film.
Well, cool. I appreciate you seeing movies and bringing them up here so that I can put them on my radar.
Yeah, Freaks Out.
Awesome.
If I think that's a big crowd pleaser, so keep a look at it.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah, not to be confused with that old movie Freaks, which I don't like at all.
Yeah.
Is this not a sequel? Freaks Out? I don't know.
Yeah, I thought about
I don't
making some
think
kind
it's
of
a
joke like that earlier, but I couldn't come up with one. But you did it. You cracked it.
You nailed it,
I came up
Justin.
with something. I don't know how much of a joke it was, but I came up with it.
You did. Okay, cool. Is that all you wanted to say about Fantastic Fest 2021, sir?
Yeah, I'm excited to go next year. I rolled over my ticket so I'm excited to get the full experience of the Fantastic Fest. So
For sure.
it's long. It's like 8 days long. So by the end, you've adapted to that schedule, and like coming back home is tough because like 8 days is long enough to get into a routine. Anyways.
And then you go back to real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a 3-day music festival 2 weeks ago, outdoors, and like just those 3 days, I was in it and ready to go, and all of a sudden I had to go back home.
Yeah.
And Yeah, it's crazy how quickly you adapt and then realize it's over.
Yep.
But anyways, moving on. Mike, you have something to talk about, so go on.
Yeah, so this seems to have been a big time for Netflix releasing interesting content, which is good because I can go months without watching any new like Netflix content. So anyway, there is a show that was recently released by Mike Flanagan called Midnight Mass. I believe, Chris, you watched some of this, didn't you?
Yeah, actually, I finished it.
You finished it. Okay, cool, cool. I just got to say that I thoroughly enjoyed this show. What did you think?
Yeah, I've talked about his first two shows that I really liked. This might be my favorite, although that's maybe recency bias. Like, I always like his shows a lot right after I finished them, and then
Sure.
sometimes cool down a bit after a while.
Well, as someone who never really watched his other shows, but I've seen Dr. Sleep and I've seen Gerald's Game, so I'm not unfamiliar with Mike Flanagan.
Right.
But just based on the word of mouth, it seems like this show is even more well received than some of his previous stuff. But it's from what I understand, it's a different beast.
It is a little bit different. This one's what I would say very monologue heavy, which isn't bad. And I really enjoy it. There's nothing I like better than like people sitting around talking about life and religion, and just like, talking about those things. It's right up my alley. It's what I like. I think, Mike, you're in the same boat as me with that. And then it's shot really well. And so those monologues are happening, and you never wander. You never like think, oh, this is a really long monologue.
Never bored. Yeah.
Yeah. There's some really great monologues in here is what I would say. And then it's also pretty creepy too. And all of his shows have that underlying, I would say they're dramas with an underlying current of horror or, like creepiness. Mm-hmm. Like the horror is never at the forefront. It's always in the background. Like this show, I don't want to spoil anything, but I really like this show. What I would say is its best parts remind me a lot of like you guys are gonna love this. Reminds me a lot of The Leftovers and Lost. Like when people are debating, man of science, man of faith type stuff in the Lost and Leftovers stuff that I really enjoyed about this.
I can see that. So I guess let's give like a brief rundown of what this show's about. It's about a small fishing town on an island that used to be like a very successful fishing town before an oil spill a few years earlier pretty much destroyed the local ecosystem and all the fish went away, basically. So the population has dwindled down to like, I don't know, what is it, like 120 people?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and so I guess two people arrive in this town around the same time. Like one of them is a man who just got out of prison who used to live there, and the other is a new priest. And it's a very religious town, right? And I guess, like every week the church is filled with like maybe like 4 people, right? Like the religious scene has kind of dwindled. So yeah, and then not long after the new priest arrives, I guess you could say miracles or strange events start to occur.
Yeah,
and
that's
I think
already more than I knew when I went into it.
Yeah, I think to say any more would be a disservice to like just watching this story unfold.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with you. The monologues are great. The characters are all really great. It's a bit of a slow burn.
It takes 3 episodes before you're real into it. Yeah,
or like 2.8 episodes, because the end of episode 3 is where I was just like, oh man, this show is just doing something that I have not seen attempted in blending horror and religion in like such a ballsy way.
And with the way that's saying something, I think.
Right, it's not like trashy like horror. Yeah. It's like it's saying something. Yeah, it's saying something.
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed at, like, we're talking about both of these shows today, Squid Game and Midnight Mass, and I'm actually somewhat disappointed at, like, I don't feel like enough people are talking about Midnight Mass. Like,
I know.
I've watched some of Squid Game, and it's good, but Midnight Mass is really great, and I would love more conversation around this, you know. And
Me
I'm really
too,
surprised
man.
that it's not as many people are talking about it.
Yeah. As someone who was raised Catholic in my early years, this felt like it was made with care. It tackles a lot of questions about faith and doubt that most horror shows have like zero interest in. And the idea of blind belief and the things that happen for a divine reason is really put on display in a way that feels like unique and interesting. And I don't know, for lack of a better word, it's sort of like classy horror. I don't know. It's I just couldn't be happier with it, to be honest. It's probably my favorite Netflix show that I've seen.
Nice.
Yeah, I think you should check out his other two TV shows. Especially, I think The Haunting of Hill House was better than The Haunting of Bly Manor. I might be mixing those titles up. In fact, I
think that's the common consensus. I don't think you're wrong on that.
Yeah. So for sure, watch that first one, and that's also the one he directed. All like he did with this one. I believe he directed all the episodes of this series.
Yeah.
And the first series, he directed all the episodes. He was busy for the second one, so he wasn't there for all of them. So maybe that's why.
Maybe he was putting together Dr. Sleep.
Yeah, I think that was around that time.
Which Dr. Sleep is great.
I do like Dr. Sleep. If you like
Yeah.
Dr. Sleep, I think you're going to like his shows as well, because Dr. Sleep almost should be a show. It's
the director's cut is better than the theatrical cut. It's got like 20 or 30 extra minutes, I think. And as a sequel to The Shining, which is like something I never in a million years would have wanted, it works. Even Stephen King thinks that it helps kind of bridge the Stanley Kubrick version to his novel version, just in like the cleverness of the writing and everything. So yeah, Mike Flanagan, so far he hasn't really missed on anything I've seen from that guy. Like, he seems like he understands character-based horror, which I think really shines through on all of his stuff. It makes it, kind of elevates it above just like, I don't know, Malignant or, you know, whatever James Wan is doing.
Well, there are different styles. I do think his taste is a lot like Stephen King. Like, if you've read Stephen King's books, or a lot of times the horror lurks in the background of Stephen King's books.
Yeah.
At least the ones I've read. And there's drama happening in the foreground. And I don't know if he's influenced by Stephen King or if that they just have the same taste. But, like, he's definitely the film equivalent of Stephen King, I think.
Cool. All right, so Squid Game. This is the next thing we wanted to talk about, and this is something I've seen the entirety of, but I know you guys haven't, so I'll be a little bit more vague with my thoughts. But what do you guys think of this show? Justin, you kick off since you haven't really said much of anything.
Okay, sure, yeah. So I am 5 episodes in, so I've seen 5. So I think that means I have 4 left. And so far, I'm enjoying it. I think it's pretty good. It's certainly engaging and fun, and I think a difficult show to quit watching, because every time an episode ends, it's always like, I always feel like we're in the climax, and then based on like other TV shows, we would, you know, see it resolve, and then maybe something else would happen to tease the next episode. But it seems to always like stop in like the climax.
Yep.
Yeah.
And be like, okay, episode done. And so I'm always kind of tempted to press the next, play the next episode immediately. So that's really, to me, like probably the best thing it has going for it is what's going to happen next. Because outside of that, while I'm enjoying the show, I'm enjoying the characters for the most part. I think that sometimes it feels a little bit like, dark and screwed up for dark and screwed up's sake.
Over the top dark and screwed
yeah.
up.
Yeah.
That sounds like a South Korean drama to me.
It does, but I'm hoping that by the end of it, it feels a little bit more worthwhile to have experienced that and not feel like they were just trying to shock me, or make me go, oh, wow, that's messed up. Like, I want to feel more than that by the end. And I don't know that I will, because I'm obviously not done with it, but that's maybe my hesitancy towards like being really, really into the show, is just being like guarded about how it's all going to wrap up and how I'm going to feel about it in the end,
Sure. Yeah.
But we haven't really said what it's about. Just so like really quickly, for anybody who hasn't seen this, which I think everybody in the world has seen it, is the last stat that I saw. But it's about a group of people. It's like roughly 500 people get brought to this place where they are forced to play children's playground games, hence Chris's question at the beginning of the show, for a cash prize. But I don't think it's a spoilery because it happens in the first episode. If you lose the game, you die. That's basically the premise of the show, right? And you could dive into more of like why these people are all there, but I think it's more fun to just watch the show, maybe. Or if you guys want to tell those details, go for it. But Chris, what do you think of this show?
Yeah, I also enjoyed this show. I'm on episode 6. I have 3 more episodes, I believe, to go to finish it. So I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I haven't seen the whole thing, so I can't necessarily speak of it as a whole. But what I would say is, I think one of the things you said, Justin, was it seemed like before you started watching it, that it seemed kind of like we've seen this story a lot before, right? Like
it's derivative of some very popular things that
I mean
most film people have seen before.
Yeah, I mean, Hunger Games is like probably the most popular version of that Battle Royale,
which is derivative of Battle Royale.
Yeah, is, and you can follow that down the chain, like of history or whatever. But I think one of the things that kind of set it apart for me, and maybe you guys can tell me like if I'm just off base on this, but like the first 2 episodes kind of made this stand apart for me, and the decisions that they made in order to develop those characters. I don't want to spoil anything, but I just by saying that, I think that kind of sets it apart a little bit from these other things that have come before it, that add something new and fresh to that genre or this story.
Could you say, maybe without giving too much away, and if it is, let me know and I'll edit this part out, but like the characters have more choices than maybe they do in other things.
Yeah. That's what I would say. And why and when they make those decisions is interesting, and maybe says is a commentary on like society as well. I think this is a pretty fun show. It's like ultra violent, but it's a pretty, ultimately, like, to me it seems kind of a lighter show as compared to like Midnight Mass maybe, but
yeah,
go ahead.
It's lighter, but I think you're definitely you guys are kind of dancing around this, but I think it's important to note that I think what sets this apart from something like Hunger Games, which, to be fair, I only watched the first 2 Hunger Games and read 0 of the books, but it is a commentary on class structure, right? Maybe not in a super deep way, but I think definitely in the first couple episodes and a little bit at the end, which I won't get into here, but it is very much about class structure. And the people in the game all do have a lot in common in the sense that they're not making it in the world very well. Yeah. And that is important to note, I think.
It's easy to put yourself in their position and be like, maybe I would play that game too if I was in that position. I might make that same decision.
Well, I would not play this game. I'll tell you that much. I can make that decision right now.
I will say,
I understand.
Yeah, as the person who's finished this show, I will say that there are some episodes with some bad acting from English-speaking actors. I won't say much more, but I think it is a common thing that I've noticed with South Korean dramas and movies and even like really well-respected directors is once they start dealing with people who speak English, I don't know that they can tell when bad acting is occurring.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't really often notice bad acting in foreign films.
Well, the style...
And
can often
not sure if that's because like the really good ones come over here and we probably don't have as much access to like the ones that suck, because why would they get distributed?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. It's hard to tell when someone's bad acting in a foreign language, that you don't, or a language that you don't understand or speak.
I feel like the South Korean style of acting is so much different than American. Like if I were to see acting in the South Korean style in American film, I'd be like, what is happening here? You know?
Yeah.
But
Like, why are they yelling so much? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
Isn't it, basically?
Yeah.
But
There's
there's
a
like
South Korean actor.
Yeah. Maybe that's the whole deal. But yeah, but when I watch a South Korean film, I know what I'm in for in this style. You know, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, and even though I think there's some bad acting that you guys are probably going to come across, I don't think that that's a deal breaker. You know, the whole thing begins and ends making a commentary, and I think that's important. It's not just a trashy, pulpy retelling of, you know, Battle Royale or Hunger Games. And so, I don't know. I think it has a little bit more soul than... So I think, Justin, I think you'll be ultimately happy with where it ends up, even though I think it does require some thought and some thinking. So, like, I don't know what average Joe is pulling from this movie, right? Or this show. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how many people finish the last episode and are like, let's think about that. Or if they're just like, okay, next show. You know, who knows?
Yeah.
But
yeah. My experience with average Joe, and maybe not even average Joe, that might not necessarily be fair, is that my wife, who teaches middle school, which is she teaches 6th through 8th grade. So what is that, like 11 to 13-year-olds basically?
Yeah.
All of them are watching Squid Game, and they all love it.
Hopefully they're reading the subtitles and not watching the dub.
I doubt it, because Netflix auto does the English dub. I had to
didn't
switch
for
it
me.
myself.
Yeah, it didn't for me either.
Really?
Really?
Weird. Okay, well, for me it did. It started out English dubbed, and I had to turn on Korean audio and English subtitles.
Maybe I watched it before it became such a hit that they decided to make that decision. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I saw the trailer pretty early on when it dropped, like before I'd really heard about it or it became really popular. And the trailer that played was English dubbed, and
Ugh.
I quickly made a decision to not watch it because it seemed really bad. And to be fair, that's probably the English dub.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it also seemed derivative, and that kind of kept me away from it until, you know, Mike, you had said that you had watched it all, and we're like, yeah, it's pretty good. It's entertaining, you know? So
Yeah.
I was like, I'll be entertained. Why not? And my wife always tries to like keep up with what her kids are watching too, right? So she wanted to watch it. So between the two of you, I was convinced.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you did. Anything else we want to talk about with Squid Game?
I think that main guy's really good. I haven't seen him before, I don't think, in anything, but he's younger than the main actor who's in Old Boy, but he's got that type of he reminds me of that type of person, right? So like,
yeah.
I hope that we see more of him, and he goes on to do like really great things like that. The actor in Old Boy who like did that, and like I Saw the Devil and other things, like really notable movies.
Yeah, I agree. I got vibes of Old Boy several times throughout Squid Game because of him, and even some events that happened in the last few episodes. I won't say any more than that, but I was reminded of that guy.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, and you could tell this is influenced by Old Boy and by a lot of those early 2000s South Korean thrillers, like that South Korean new wave. I don't know if that's what it was called, but whatever it was, that like renaissance of the South Korean film that happened in like the 2000s, the aughts, I think influenced this. And you can see that in the filmmaking, the look, that sort of
I still think that new wave is still happening, but maybe it's not a
It
new
is.
wave anymore. It's a medium wave.
It's just a wave.
Yeah.
It's just their awesome film industry at work.
Yeah. I think we can safely say now they're just talented.
Yeah.
They have a really rich little film industry going on.
Yeah.
Well, great.
Cool. So those are our thoughts on Squid Game and Midnight Mass and Fantastic Fest. So I think it's time we move into the main review. What do you guys say?
I say let's go.
All right.
I woke up this morning and I got myself a gun. That's what I say.
Well, hopefully you have a permit for that gun.
Damn it.
Not in Texas.
Yeah, just kidding. In Texas, you don't need one, apparently. So, all right. Anyways,
Uncle Dick.
Growing up with the family takes a toll.
Maybe an ambassador to England or France.
You're my nephew.
Might like to gamble.
I want to do whatever I can to help you.
You may be a businessman.
My gift to you.
High-degree thief.
I want to go to college. I can't get caught with shit like this.
Look, you take the speakers, right? At the same time, you say to yourself, this is the last time I'm ever going to steal something. It's that simple.
Okay, so as always with our newer films, we will be doing a spoiler-free section up front. We'll talk generally about our thoughts on the film and then quickly move on into spoilers. So if you have not seen Many Saints of Newark yet, you can pause the podcast. Or actually, no, you can keep listening to the podcast. Through our spoiler-free section, we'll give you an alert.
you can pause it also.
We'll play. Yeah, you can pause it if you need to. That's acceptable.
Yeah.
But anyways, you can keep listening if you haven't seen it until we give you that spoiler alert, play our little warning, and that'll give you plenty of time to pause the podcast before you hear any spoilers and decide if you want to go watch Many Saints of Newark or not.
Indeed. Okay, so the Many Saints of Newark was directed by Alan
That's not
Taylor.
right. There you go.
Yeah, good thing I caught that.
Show notes were off, and that's my fault, everybody. Sorry.
Yeah. Hopefully I can trust them from here on out. I think I can. Looking over it.
You can.
All right. It stars Alessandro Nivola, Leslie Odom Jr., Vera Farmiga, and John Bernthal. The IMDb synopsis says, witness the making of Tony Soprano, the story that reveals the humanity behind Tony's struggles and the influences of his family, especially his uncle, Dickie Moltisanti, had over him, becoming the most iconic mob boss of all time. I read that weird, but I don't like that synopsis at all for this movie.
No.
I think it does the movie a disservice, as does all the advertising so far that I've seen for the movie.
Yeah. Well, it's, to be fair, like a weird movie to summarize because you have to both sell it for what it's based on and then also explain the story, which, ultimately doesn't have quite as much to do with what it's based on.
Yeah.
Or what they have to sell it on, if that makes sense.
It's a weird duck, this movie.
Yeah.
So I think I insisted on us reviewing this, so I'll kick it off if no one minds.
No, go ahead.
Be my guest.
So I'm just going to say I enjoyed this movie. But that said, I don't think it really works that well as a standalone movie at all. It has pretty major spoilers for the last season of The Sopranos right off the bat. So I can't imagine wanting to watch this first and then deny yourself the joy of watching that show. So if you are thinking about watching this movie, I would say don't do it at all. Unless you have seen The Sopranos or never want to watch The Sopranos ever. And then you probably won't even enjoy this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. It's strictly only for people who have seen all of The Sopranos, I say.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Okay, so anyways, I think it's a decent little movie if you're familiar with the show. I'm glad I still remember a lot of the character dynamics from the show as they help me enjoy some of the humor and little tidbits within this movie. It's not great. It's not perfect, but I think it's better than no prequel movie to The Sopranos existing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. I understand that.
Yeah, so I'll keep it there for now, and I'll throw it over to whoever wants to go next. Chris, you go.
Okay, yeah, I'm kind of in the same spot as you, Mike. I liked. There's like different chunks of this movie. This movie's like 3 or 4 different things, and I like all of those things separately. But as one thing together, I don't know if it works. Like there's a lot of great stuff in this. Like Vera Farmiga's really good. Alessandro Nivola is really good as well.
He is really good in this movie.
There's a little, even Michael Gandolfini, that's his name, right? Michael?
Yes.
Is really great in this as well. Even though maybe his performance is a little bit more of an impression. But anyways, yeah, it's just this weird thing that doesn't quite mesh together. And like you said, I'm glad it's there. I enjoyed my time with it. I just don't know if it works. I don't know. All these separate pieces don't really aren't cohesive enough to be satisfying. Like individually, they're fun and good, but when they all mesh together, you're a little. I just feel a little off. I've read a lot of stuff about like how this connects with the show and stuff like that, and all that's really great and cool. But if I'm not like super excited when I watch the film, or it doesn't beg me to like look further into these little details as much, or and how it connects to the show and things like that. That's just kind of my off the cuff feeling about it. Yeah. So Justin, how do you feel about this movie?
Well, I'm not as very far off from you guys. What I will say is that, I read the Star Wars extended universe novels.
Me too.
Yeah, Mike, you do as well.
Yep.
And there are other examples of novels spun off of like TV shows and stuff that kind of expand the universe and tell a little bit more story. And sometimes they're really great. And I'm pumped that I had a great like whole book that told me this fantastic story that kind of stands on its own, but it's cool that it expanded the Star Wars universe. But even when they're not great, I still am kind of happy that I can think back and like have that little extra part of the Star Wars universe filled in for me. Mm-hmm. And that's this is somewhere in between, because it's good enough. Like I enjoyed it enough to where I wasn't bored and it went by pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. But overall, I'm mostly happy that I can kind of think back on this and the things in this movie and how they affected stuff from the show. Right. And that's kind of the most that I got out of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I would watch it again unless I just forget what happens in here and need to know again. But as long as I remember them and know them, I'm probably good without watching this movie again. I'd rather just spend time watching The Sopranos.
Well, I would say that I would watch this movie again as an epilogue to The Sopranos, maybe.
Yeah.
Like if I just got done watching the whole series again, and I was familiar with all those conversations they have throughout the series about Dickie Moltisanti and Tony's childhood, about never being a varsity athlete, and very much of The Sopranos has to deal with Tony, especially in the later seasons, wondering what would have happened had his life gone differently, right?
Yeah.
So when you keep all of that in mind, and that's all fresh in your mind, I think this movie would be a really nice epilogue.
Yeah. I think so. And that's a bit what it feels like. I think maybe I'm a little influenced by the fact that it's been a little over 10 years since I last watched The Sopranos and since I finished it.
Yeah.
For like the first and only time I've watched that series all the way through. A couple years ago, I did rewatch the first season and I'd started rewatching it, but I never finished. So that did kind of refresh my memory of a lot of these characters. So I really remembered who everyone was and their little mannerisms. The other thing that I will say that reminded me of what happens when I read a Star Wars novel is that when there are characters from the movies in them, I kind of picture them, but maybe just older or younger and acting the same. And that kind of encapsulated a lot of the characters for me that were familiar from the show.
Yeah.
Like people we had seen. I felt like at times a lot of them, with some exceptions, felt like impressions, as you said earlier, Chris, and felt like almost caricatures in some cases,
like Silvio
of the
the secondary
characters.
Characters, yes, yeah.
like Polly
like
and Silvio.
Polly, Pussy, all of those people. Maybe Pussy not as much. That's not really fair, but some of them did, and even like they made sure to do mannerisms and physical movements in the same way that the characters would.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, that it feels a little distracting to me at times, but I also I don't know if I can justify that with thinking about how this story is being told from a character who's in The Sopranos and looking back on it. So it is like, it's kind of a memory is what we're seeing.
Sure. Yeah.
So maybe it makes sense. I kind of wrestled with that a lot during this.
Yeah, well, it's like a memory and it's not, it's like, it's weird.
There's a lot of stuff that character obviously can't remember because for most of it, the movie, he's not necessarily alive and not old enough to remember.
Right.
We wanna
And
get into
also,
spoilers.
yeah, let's just
I
get into
guess,
spoilers.
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, but that's not really a spoiler is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, because
Sure.
yeah, not a spoiler.
Sure. But I can't really respond. Let's just get into spoilers so we can just cut loose. What do you say? We've all kind of given our impressions, right? Is there anything we want to talk about before we do that?
No, I don't think so. And I think anybody listening to this has probably seen The Sopranos. So like, there's not really any point in not spoiling anything for any longer. So
Yeah.
let's go.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
You know, cigarettes you got up there, I'll tell you all about it.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
And here we go.
Okay. So Mike, I think you were responding to me saying the characters kind of felt like characterizations and sometimes it's a memory.
Yeah, so obviously the movie starts out with Christopher Moltisanti, who is born halfway through the movie, right? And also throughout The Sopranos, spoilers for that show, he never knew his father, really, because as we see in this movie, Dickie Moltisanti died. And, they even talk about the scene where Dickie Moltisanti died when Tony actually tells Christopher, yeah, he was shot carrying TV trays into the house. And that's exactly what happens in this movie. But there are some things that don't line up as well, that Christopher has just been told about his father. Like, for example, I don't believe in the movie we ever see that Dickie Moltisanti was a junkie.
No.
Yeah.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, and Christopher believes he was. Because, the whole show, Christopher struggles with his addiction. And so it could have just been told, like, he's been told by, like, Tony's mother or whoever, that was the case. But I think there's a little bit of unreliable narrator happening within this story as well.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say because he's also narrating things that he couldn't possibly have seen and didn't know at the time of his death. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird. It is weird. Like, I don't know why that narration necessarily exists.
Yeah, I honestly feel like,
to remind people who haven't seen Sopranos in a while of some things.
Yeah, I feel like it would have been better without that narration, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree. It's so sparse and barely in there.
Right, exactly.
Like, it's beginning, end, and then I think maybe like one, possibly two lines throughout the rest of the movie. It's like, quit trying to hold my hand.
Yeah, I think just a movie focusing just on Dickie and Tony and just let the audience do the work. You don't necessarily need to be like, there he is, the man I went to hell for. I don't know. Like,
that's the dude who killed me.
Yeah, he choked me. And it's like, oh, well, why is this in here other than to spoil the show? I don't know. It doesn't really add much to the movie.
I read something about how The Sopranos is very obsessed with the other side of certain things. Like even in the movie, when Christopher meets Tony for the first time or whatever, or like every time the baby comes near Tony, he just starts crying for no reason. Mm-hmm. And now whether that's a version of what the story is, like the narrator who's telling the story and why that's happening. I don't know, but there is a lot of like mysticism and going to hell. That's a very real thing in The Sopranos.
Definitely,
so,
yeah.
I don't know if it works, but I understand why it's there, is what I would say, because all of these things on the other side, and even like kind of changing subjects, but like in the same way, the Ray Liotta character, so Ray Liotta plays basically his Goodfellas character at the beginning of the film, is murdered by Dickie Moltisanti,
his son,
and then
his son, which is just notable.
And then his son starts going to see his twin brother in prison.
That threw me for a minute. I was like, what?
Yeah. And I thought, actually, like, I was disappointed. I was like, oh, Ray Liotta's just doing the same old when I saw him in the first half of this movie.
Yeah.
And then, like, in the second half, when he comes, I thought he did a really great job at juxtaposing those two characters. But what I will say, I think that there's questions to whether or not that those scenes are real, or are they just supposed to be similar to Tony talking to his shrink? There's a lot of stuff in here. I think what I wish this was a season.
Me too.
And I wish we could have really dove into a lot of these things, because as a movie, I don't think there's enough time to deal. Like, there's a whole race riot in this movie that is really interesting, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it, but I just don't think we get enough time with those characters to like really make it worthwhile.
Rewarding. Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in here. I just don't know that we get enough time with it. So yeah.
Here's what I'll say. I think it's interesting. Okay, so I listened to a couple of podcasts about this movie with David Chase and some interviews. There's a podcast that Michael Imperioli, is that how you say his name, who plays Christopher in the show, and the guy who plays Bobby in the show, they do a show called Talking Sopranos, where they go through the entire show and they'll talk about it, like behind the scenes stories. They'll talk about the episode and as it's on its own, fan theories, etc., etc. And they recently put out a Many Saints of Newark special where they interview the cast, like Michael Gandolfini and Corey Stoll, who plays Uncle Junior, and David Chase himself. And then I also listened to the WTF with Mark Maron episode where he interviews David Chase. And so basically, he's always wanted to kind of flesh these race riots that happened in Newark out a little bit, because they happened when he was a little kid. Mm-hmm. And shortly after these race riots, the mob pretty much had to flee the city and move into the suburbs, where we find them at the beginning of The Sopranos. Mm-hmm. So this is sort of like the beginning of the end for the mob.
Yeah, because Rico happens, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's all really fascinating, but man, is it only lightly touched on in this movie.
Yeah, that is not necessarily in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think if you know it's there, right? Like if you're familiar with like the history of the mob and all that stuff, you could probably infer that that's about to happen. But as someone who's like not familiar with the race riots from Newark, or like the situation surrounding it or the fallout from it, it would have helped to have that touched on just a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, like the three different things that happen in here, like the race riots, the Dickie Moltisanti kind of story, and then Tony Soprano as a kid. Like, I don't think I got enough from any three of those things. I enjoyed what we got. I thought like there's a great Vera Farmiga scene with Tony Soprano.
There's a couple of great Vera Farmiga scenes. I think she's awesome in this movie.
She's really great, yeah. But ultimately, I don't know that it adds up.
Well,
I don't know that there's enough.
Here's what I did get from the movie. We've talked enough about the things that the movie is lacking and that I didn't get, but here's what I did enjoy. This is a movie about generational pain. Mm-hmm. Right? Dickie Moltisanti was hurt by his father. He was abused. He was beaten. His father pushed his mother down the stairs. You know, he was just a terrible human being. Dickie Moltisanti turns out to be a lot like Tony Soprano before psychotherapy hit big, right? So he doesn't have the same outlets Tony Soprano does, but he's very similar. He's a likable guy. He's charming. He tries to make up for the shitty things that he does by doing good things like teaching a blind little league. Right? Like he's not able to fully see himself, but he doesn't view himself as a bad guy.
Right.
But he is, right? And so Ray Liotta's character, you know, he'll come up there and he'll be like, "You want to do a good deed? What are you talking about?" Like, okay, you know? And eventually Ray Liotta's character, the prison version, his uncle, has to tell him, maybe you should just stay out of your nephew's life. Implying that maybe the best thing he could do for Tony, the kindest, best deed he could do for Tony, is to leave him alone. Because Tony clearly looks up to Dickie. That's addressed in the show. They talk about how that's why he loves Christopher so much and has such a complicated relationship with Christopher in the show, is because he loved Dickie so much. And what I think is interesting is Dickie tries to do that. You know, at the end of the movie, he does try to distance himself from Tony. You know, he pretends he's not there. He makes Silvio turn out the lights. After he's already sort of indoctrinated him into this life by making him accept stolen speakers and all that stuff. And Tony doesn't get much love from his parents, but it's possible that, you know, if his mom would have gotten on those antidepressants that they were talking about, and if Dickie had successfully distanced himself for a few years before he died, it's possible Tony could have done any number of other things. Right? There's a certain sense of, like, tragedy that happens because you know where Tony's going. And for a little bit in the movie, it looks like there's these things that could have swayed him in any different direction. Like if his mother had been able to get mental help and been more loving, or if Dickie could have cut ties completely, then maybe there could have been some good to come out of that. But instead, you know, he just barely starts to distance himself from Tony, and his mother straight up declines the antidepressants, and he never gets them for her like he wanted to get. And then so at the end of the movie, whenever Dickie Moltisanti's laying in that coffin, and you get like the dreamish pinky promise, you know, and the theme music kicks in, you know that the cycle continues.
Well, and maybe that's kind of where the framing device fits in, because Christopher's like, he's in hell pleading his case, and he's like, look guys, I never had a chance. You know, like this goes back, you know, 2 generations before me, and I never had a chance to like make my own decisions. I was destined to do this before I was even born.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is what the movie is saying. It's a little sloppy, and it's kind of convoluted because it's like this pseudo Sopranos tie-in epilogue thing, and then sort of pseudo like movie on its own. But that's what I take from this movie, and I think that's the good I find in this movie.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with Dickie and Tony, like ultimately, the big thing that I felt between the two was that their actions or their attempts at redemption are consistently pretty much a little bit too late.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The damage has all already been done, and try as they may to undo it, or want as they may to get away from it and do something else and leave it behind, it's impossible.
Yeah, they still did it, and they remember it.
Yeah, like I honestly think whether Dickie dies or not, the damage is pretty much already done.
Well, you know,
unless he can, I guess maybe like sit down and literally tell like Tony, hey, don't follow me or don't do this. I guess that's a possibility.
Well, doesn't he ask Dickie to get his mom those pills too?
Yeah.
Yeah, or to talk to her about getting them.
Well, that's why he had him in his pockets when he was murdered.
Oh, okay. I didn't even. Yeah, you're right. Okay. So I think the damage could have been undone a little bit. Like, yeah, his dad was in the life, but his dad also seemed pretty distant. You know what I mean? Not quite as abusive as his mother, and And we know that she continues to be abusive his whole life, and he has a really complicated relationship with her. But
well, his dad is almost like, to me, seems like a force that would drive him away from that life just because he's not around and
so
doesn't seem that great towards him.
I think
he's his dad, really.
If there had been more time, I think there is a chance that Tony could have gone a different direction. Maybe not, probably not, because usually these things don't happen that way. But I think there was a chance. And I think the movie kind of paints that out because he had ambitions other than to be in that life. He didn't want to accept the stolen speakers.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think there was a chance to turn it around because I think Ray Liotta really seemed to get through to Dickie at the end. He's like, maybe some of the things that you do aren't God's favorite. Which I thought was really good.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I think that Ray Liotta's, the uncle Ray Liotta, kind of set Dickie on the path to where, like, maybe Dickie certainly wouldn't have changed. And Christopher, who knows how he would have ended up. But, yeah, who knows? And I also think it's pretty interesting that the whole time you're suspecting the Leslie Odom Jr.'s, like, branch-off faction to be the one to have killed Dickie. It kind of sets it up that way, and then you find out it's just old petty Uncle Jr.
Yeah, so that's a question I have for anyone who's more familiar with The Sopranos or is watching more recently, is did we know who actually killed his father prior to this movie?
There's an episode in The Sopranos where Tony wants Christopher to do a hit on a retired cop that used to be like an informant or something, or like a tie to the mob.
Mm-hmm.
And he sends Christopher in there with the implication that detective killed his father. And he actually says, your father was, he's like, my father was carrying in a baby crib, right? And then Tony's like, yeah, well, no, it was TV trays, but it could just as easily have been a baby crib.
Yeah.
And then he kind of sets Christopher towards this guy. And then before Christopher kills him, the dude's like, you're being set up. I didn't do it. Whatever, whoever told you that I killed your father doesn't ring a bell to me. I didn't do it. And so Christopher sort of lives and dies never really knowing what happened to his father.
Okay. Well, cool. Then, surprising that it was Junior for sure. Like,
and
I guess that's one thing
time.
I didn't...
Yeah. Surprising and not, because Junior's always been a petty, sort of insecure guy.
Yeah, I know. And that's one thing I was going to say is that, well, confirmed, he's always been kind of a piece of garbage.
Yep. Well, I think it's funny, the whole movie, people are always comparing Junior to Dickie and being like, why can't you be more like Dickie? And he's like, I'll talk to Tony. And he's like, nah, he only listens to Dickie. So it's like, this is before, his younger brother became the guy, the head of the mob, right? So it's like, at this point, Uncle Junior still technically should have been in charge, right? But it's like, he just never got that opportunity because no one ever really respected him.
Yeah. My favorite Junior scene is he's like, he talks to Tony and he's like, let's go play catch. And it's just like pouring down rain outside.
He's like, it's raining.
Yeah.
You can't do anything right.
Yeah. So, I think, like I said, there's things to like, I think, if you dig deep enough. It's just kind of sloppy.
Yeah. It's like, overall, I don't know that the parts add up to like a greater than their whole, but there are good parts. Like, my favorite scene, I think, is Tony and his mom with like the school counselor.
Yeah.
They're sort of separate scenes. Like, I liked that.
Yeah. I like how the teacher was like, he's smart. And he's like, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
It's like, what a crappy person.
Yeah. I think I just wish things had been fleshed out more. I think I've said that, but
even like a 30-minute longer movie. Like,
yeah. It's weird because I think David Chase always kind of wanted to get away. He was always kind of ashamed that he was making TV, where he revolutionized television, but and then he had a really bad reaction when HBO put this straight out onto, their day and date stuff, right? He's like, I wouldn't have made this he wanted to make a movie. He's always wanted to make movies, right. He wrote on the Rockford Files a long time ago, which also Rockford Files is pretty awesome. But so I feel like he wanted to make a movie, but I feel like it would have been better as a TV show,
or at least like a mini series, right?
Or 3 movies,
Well, let me ask you guys this: would you guys because he signed a deal with HBO to make more Sopranos content if they want it. Would you guys enjoy more movies with this cast? The people who are left? AKA
Yes,
everyone but Dickie?
Right. And Christopher's mom. Right?
Well,
that wasn't the mom.
Christopher's mom is technically still alive. That was the
Christopher's mom's
Gumar,
still alive.
or whatever they call their mistresses that died.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
Which, by the way,
I got
that scene
mixed up at a
disturbed
certain
me.
point. What's that?
The scene where he kills her in the ocean.
Yeah.
I didn't like that. That was, I mean, it felt like The Sopranos, but it was really violent.
Yeah, I couldn't remember about Christopher and his mom and whether or not she was alive or whatever. I knew he, didn't know his dad, but I thought that the mistress kind of looked like Christopher.
Yeah,
So I thought
too.
that's what they were doing.
yeah. No, I mean that would have been a good casting, but no, I think his mom is still technically alive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I was actually shocked when she died because I didn't think that Christopher
Was an orphan.
had his mom was dead too.
Yeah.
I don't remember that being a thing.
No,
so
I think
whenever
she might even
died,
be in the show. I can't remember.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
But anyway, to answer we didn't answer the question. Would you guys like to see more movies?
Sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Because I think the biggest thing that we've all kind of agreed on and said is that this just isn't enough. And there's so many things missing. And it feels maybe
Incomplete.
incomplete and undercooked in some ways. So, give me some more. And maybe that will help fill this out and fill out some of the things I wanted more of from this.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm all about it.
I agree, because Corey Stoll as Uncle Junior is great.
Yeah. Everybody, the casting is great. John Barenthal's in this, and I think John Barenthal's great, but he barely gets any time. I would like to see more about that. And
Yeah, it would have to be more Tony focused, I think. But if Michael Gandolfini's up to it, I don't know. He doesn't really sound like James Gandolfini, but he does look and move like him and react like him. So I don't know.
he has this look that he does, this half-lidded look, where his eyes are half open, that's just like Tony Soprano, or not. I guess Tony Soprano, James Gandolfini playing Tony Soprano. And I was just like, oh wow, that's real close.
Yeah,
It's
well,
the exact same look.
Go on, Justin.
Well, I think to that end, I have zero problem with how much any characters look like other characters, in this type of thing. I can suspend that disbelief. Obviously, if it's vastly different, if you cast an Asian person as Tony Soprano, that would be weird, right? As young Tony Soprano, but outside of that, I can suspend that disbelief. I kind of have sometimes a bit of a pet peeve about when they cast a prequel, or they do a film where you have to cast young versions of adults or adult versions of kids from a previous thing, and people automatically criticize the casting because such and such actress looks more like the person,
Right.
or that, oh well, they look just like them, so that's good casting. I'd rather them be able to give us the performance that they need now than look like the person that they're supposed to be, older, younger, whatever.
Right.
So I just say that's my piece on that.
Well,
Yeah.
Let me ask you: Do you think that if they did a sequel to this, you would want Michael Gandolfini in the role? If it was young Tony enough, timeline wise?
I thought he did pretty well in this.
I did too.
Regardless of whether or not he was doing a great Tony Soprano,
Well, he's not. He's not the Tony we know
times.
just yet.
Yeah. I mean, they're mannerisms, right?
Yeah.
He's actually a character I didn't feel that impression thing on that much. Not as much as good as Vera Farmiga was. I felt the somewhat impression of the mom at times.
Yeah.
Both of them felt like they had character behind them, I think.
Yeah, some people really felt like they made it their own, and some people did not.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
So
Cool. Do we have anything else we want to hit on?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know that there's much to talk about in terms of the filmmaking. It's pretty sterile.
I mean, it feels like
a
The Sopranos.
decent enough way.
Yeah.
Yeah, with a higher budget, better cameras or something.
Right. Yeah.
I actually watched the first episode like immediately after I watched the movie. This movie looks so much better than that first episode.
Yeah, well, that first episode came out in 1998 on TV.
Yeah. Like, I doubt it might have been shot in HD at most.
Well, it's shot in film, I think.
Yeah, probably film. You're right. But this is probably shot in like 6 or 8K or some.
Yeah, something really like crisp and clean.
Yeah. Like, and I don't necessarily remember the filmmaking as much from the Sopranos series, but this felt very like influenced and like by like David Fincher's sterility in his filmmaking.
Yeah, I can see that. Maybe.
Visually, I kept getting David Fincher vibes. Probably not as polished and accomplished and well done as David Fincher would do something, but I felt the influence.
Yeah, cool. Well, I guess those are our thoughts on the Many Saints of Newark. I still say that if I ever watch the series again, which I want to, this movie kind of inspired me to want to.
Same.
I think I would watch this at the end of it all as like a little epilogue to sort of inform some of the unanswered questions that the show kind of leaves you with.
Yeah, I think definitely if I was watching it with like my wife who's never seen Sopranos and we watched the whole thing, I would be like, okay, now we have to watch the movie for sure.
Yeah, because I think it would add to the tragedy that is Tony Soprano with the generational trauma pain thing.
Yeah, I would make her wait like 12 years. So.
Yeah, that way it would be fresh on her mind.
To all of us. Yeah, exactly. And I'll just recap all of The Sopranos to her right before we watch it for about 3 hours.
That's the best way to experience that story.
I think so. Okay, cool. Well, that does it for this episode, I think. So thank you, listeners, for listening. Thank you, Jake Wagner Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bobscotch.
Stay tuned to this channel. Our next episode will be the Casually Criterion episode on Night of the Hunter.
Yay.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. We will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.